Thank you, Ed, so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear, thank you.
Perfect. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and also for the Nakura panel for inviting me and Cheryl to speak at today's conference. So today, Cheryl and I will be giving a brief overview of the materials held in our respective collections related to Asian animals. In my collection, when I talk, you'll probably hear some of the names that have already been repeated quite a lot so far today. But we will then give you a very brief introduction to the forthcoming exhibition, Animals, Art, Science and Sound, that will be held, as Ed said, next year. Just waiting for this to see if it wants to work. It did. So the British Library holds thousands of items related to the fauna and flora of Asia, from handwritten reports to drawings, prints, and paintings. These items provide an important insight into the human discovery, knowledge, engagement, and use of the natural world. Three of the richest collections related to animals are held in the various linguistic collections of the Asian and African Studies department, the visual arts collections, which I work with, and then also the India Office Records and Private Papers collections. Three examples from these collections can be seen on this slide, including the rather wonderful discovery of a unicorn from Tibet. These materials include items related to religion, mythology, science, and economic subjects, and occur in a range of mediums and languages. Other sections of the British Library, however, also hold extensive materials related to animals. So the Western Heritage Manuscripts Collection also holds extensive material related to Asia in its broadest sense. The Philatelic Collection has thousands, let's just say thousands, it's the easiest way of putting it, thousands of issued stamps and related kind of revenue material, but also original artworks that were produced for in the production of these stamps as well, which is an amazing resource to kind of explore more. And then finally, the library's printed heritage collections, which come from all over the world, but were related to Asian fauna and flora, are also incredibly important in that they represent some of the oldest printed material related to these subjects, and also some of the most current. One of the other collections, however, that the library holds, which is kind of perhaps slightly less well known, is also the library's sound collection. So I'm actually going to pass over to Cheryl, who's now going to talk to you about the Asian animal holdings related to Asian animals within the sound collection.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So you want to go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the British Library Sound Archive was formed in 1955 as an independent organisation known then as the British Institute of Recorded Sound. It joined the British Library in 1983. So today we have over, I mean, it grows every day, but the last count was 6.5 million sound recordings that cover a broad range of subject areas. So all genres of music, spoken word, radio broadcasts, the Wildlife Sounds collection that I look after, as well as the Soundscapes collection, and a variety of other content as well. So mechanical sounds, accents and dialects and things like that. So if we look at the Wildlife Environmental Sounds collection specifically, this was one of the last collections or subject areas to be formed within the Sound Archive. Today, it has over 300,000 catalogued wildlife and environmental recordings, most of which are unpublished and unique to the library. But we also have a very comprehensive collection of published material, and that pretty much charts the entire history of commercial wildlife sound recording from 1910 to the present day. We cover all the animal groups, so your birds, your mammals, your fish, your reptiles, amphibians, and vertebrates, as well as broader sounds, so natural habitats, environmental sounds such as weather recordings and water recordings, as well as mechanical sounds, And this is the most comprehensive and most accessible collection really of its kind in the UK. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So the first sound recording of an animal was actually of an Asian bird, an Indian shama or a white-rumped shama. Excuse me. This was recorded in 1889 by the then 8-year-old Ludwig Koch, who can be seen here on the right. And his father had bought him one of the very early recording devices known as an Edison phonograph and a box of wax cylinders. And so Ludwig decided to experiment and thought he would record one of his pet birds, which was the shama. Now we're going to try and play it here. If it doesn't work, doesn't matter, because it's online and I'll put a link in the chat, but we'll try it anyway, see if it works. Great, it worked. So here you see Ludwig as much, not 8 years old anymore, at his book launch in Harrods in 1955. His book Memoirs of a Birdman is a great read if you're interested. So if we move to the next slide, what we're going to do now is just have a quick look at the published content that I have. So the published material is from across Asia. It dates from the mid-1950s to the present day and includes a variety of content. So there are identification guides, there are soundscape records, there are compilations of birdsong, which aren't designed to be identification guides, but are more for the enjoyment of birdsong. And they come in different, on different sound carriers as well. So you have the very early shellac discs, then we move along to LPs, cassettes, CDs. I don't think we have any published mini discs or things like that, but also digital audio, which is becoming increasingly popular. So what I'm going to do now is just show you some of my favorites, just to give you a little bit of eye candy really for my collection. So the first one that we go to, this is, I think, certainly in our collection, the earliest published record or sound book of Japanese bird songs. There's 3 volumes in total. This is volume 1 from 1954, and it comes with 3 shellac discs and a little identification guide. And it's certainly one of my favorites from a visual point of view, but also from a sonic point of view. And this is online that you can listen to as well. We also have LPs. A lot of it is dominated by birds, as you'd expect. Sorry, Cam. Go to the next one. But we do also have people also release records of other animals. So this is one on the voices of gibbons. And then if we keep going, this is just another LP from the collection from 1982. And then I think next we have a variety of cassettes. Oh no, some more insects. It's from Japan. There's quite a lot of material came out of Japan, or continues to come out of Japan actually. Whenever we've been able to, we've collected this, some of which, most of this we will purchase ourselves, but often we do get donations from record labels or private collectors who would just like a permanent home for their material. So I think the next one might be cassettes. Yes, my favorite is The Birds Around Mount Fuji. It's beautiful. And some of these were published by record labels, and some would be published by small societies, and sometimes it's even by individuals. So the next one is just to show another sound carrier. So this is a book and CD set. This looks at non-songbirds, and its partner publication looks at songbirds. This is 1996, and we have items, that were released in the 21st century as well, but mainly digital audio. So if we move along, so looking at the unpublished content, we have, again, this is the most well used and the dominant part of my collection. Field recordings here, or Asian field recordings anyway, I have about 26,000 recordings from across Asia, and many more which are still to be digitized and catalogued. About half of these, about 50%, come from China and India. And as you can see on this chart, we have other areas covered as well. They've come from a variety of sources. They've come from scientists working in the field. They've come from bird tour guide leaders, amateur field recordists who have used their holiday to go out to places to record the wildlife, also broadcasters as well. And they're used for a variety of purposes as well. We're heavily used for scientific research, and a lot of the recordings, particularly the material from China and India, have been used in the reclassification of species, along with DNA sequencing and morphological analysis. It's also used in education, in music production, in art installations, for private enjoyment, for well-being. So it's used, our recordings are used in a variety of different ways, and we continue to receive more recordings. So the collection is constantly growing, which is great. So if we move along very quick, this is just in terms of accessing the sound collections. We've got well, we're due to have a new website in 2023, but at the moment, if you want to have a little look, you can go to British Library Sounds, and this covers the entire sound archive, not just my section, although there is a section for environment and nature. It's not just based on Asian material, but you can find Asian material in there. And I would recommend also having a look at the World and Traditional Music section, because they have a section dedicated or subsection dedicated to Asian music, and it's very well worth exploring. We also have material on our SoundCloud channel. So if you want to just explore that, if you're looking for something specific, go to the Sound and Moving Image Catalogue, where you can search by species name or location or a combination of whatever you want to look at. If you were desperate to listen to something that hasn't been digitized or isn't online, you can contact the listening and viewing service. You can come into the library and have a lovely afternoon or morning listening to our material. And you can also follow us on Twitter, either Sound Archive, BL Sound Heritage, or myself, depending on what your interests are. And we also have a pretty active blog at this Sound and Vision blog of the British Library. So it's a very quick run through of the Sound Archive, but hopefully it's given you some idea of what I look after.
Thank you, Cheryl, so much. I'm now going to give you a little bit of an overview of the visual arts collections. So those are the ones that I kind of primarily look after. So the visual arts collections covers the whole of Asia in its broadest sense. We look after material from the Middle East, Africa, Central, South and Southeast Asia, as well as East Asia. And we have around 450,000 items within that collection, which includes photographs, prints, drawings, paintings, sculptures, notebooks, equipment, and furniture. The collection primarily has its origins in historical libraries and archives, such as the East India Company Library and also the India Office, but we also have a large number of items in the collection which have come in from private collectors, private patrons, and also private researchers and kind of amateur researchers and people who've acquired images for their own interests. Animals are found throughout these collections. So we have a large number of historic photographic material, such as this one shown here, which have a large number. So it's mainly focused on the economic and commercial uses of animals. So you can see here 2 elephants moving timber from a collection that was produced in Myanmar. And then we also have other works such as this Indian miniature painting of a rather beautiful locust and a butterfly found in a landscape, or the oil painting of the tiger drinking in the jungle pool, which was produced in a Western style. So we have animals that appear in a whole range of different mediums and also a whole different range of settings and kind of thematic approaches. The largest collection, however, of material related to animals can be found in what we call our natural history collections or our natural history drawings. So these were primarily produced between the 18th and 19th century. We have over 5,000, and this is kind of roughly half divided between botanical illustrations and zoological illustrations, and probably in a similar way to kind of what Henry has been saying, and also what Isabel was saying, that we are strongest in South Asia, but we do have material also related to East Asia as well, East and Southeast Asia. They were primarily made by Asian and European artists as both export and kind of commercial goods, or they were directly commissioned by naturalists and collectors and patrons who were part of the British colonial and European colonial networks of the 18th and 19th century. So I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of the main collections that we have. So the largest collection that we hold within the natural history drawings is that acquired and collected by the Marquis of Wellesley. He was the Governor General of Madras and then later Bengal at the turn of the 19th century or the beginning of the 19th century. And the material that we hold here is over 2,000 natural history studies, which he either directly commissioned himself from artists within the region, or which he in Bengal, or which he was receiving from colleagues around the world, and also kind of both within Asia, but then also kind of further afield, such as Australia. So we see some of the examples of the types of different styles and different kind of subject matter that Wellesley was collecting. So you have some lovely Moloch gibbons, some insects, and then you also have a wombat. And we know from documentation that a wombat actually was sent to him from the Governor of New South Wales. So he had the wombat in his menagerie in Barrackpore, and this painting is taken from that one. So his Wellesley collection is the largest collection of material that we hold, but it also holds duplicates of other works in other collections. So we also gives a wonderful example of the networks that were existing between collectors and patrons, and the kind of transportation of knowledge through such artworks, which I think is actually really important to kind of understand a little bit more. Another collection that we hold, and you're probably quite familiar with this name, Francis Buchanan or Francis Buchanan Hamilton, is known by various different ways. The library holds over 300 watercolor and pencil drawings from his collection. They cover a range of subjects, including birds, mammals, and reptiles, and were primarily created by Indian artists, including Haludar, I think, no, one of these, the fuzzy bear is definitely by Haludar. And these were kind of primarily commissioned when Buchanan Hamilton was the superintendent of Barrackpore Menagerie in the early years of the 19th century. And actually you can see on this slide that the image of the Moloch gibbons with the 3 monkeys is very similar to the Moloch gibbons in the Wellesley collection. And we know that Wellesley and Buchanan Hamilton were kind of sending images backwards and forwards by the same artists, so kind of transferring knowledge between their own collections. Another large collection that we hold, which is slightly different in that it wasn't commissioned by a European, is known as the Raja Sifiji of Tanjore collection, which is known as NHD 7. This contains 117 drawings of animals depicting birds, mammals, fishes, and reptiles, including this rather impressive ray in the center of the slide. So these were commissioned by the Raja of Tanjore, Sifiji, between 1801 and 1803. Now, he had extensive connections to the East India Company, and he was also tutored by British, Dutch, and Scottish tutors, so that he was very much within the kind of milieu of the East India Company. So the style is probably been influenced by those, but there is a chain. You can see that there's multiple artists working for this within this collection through the different kind of approaches to, say, the tiger versus the lobster, as you can see on this slide. The Raja Sifiji collection is actually quite important in that it is an example of local patronage of artists within a kind of European natural history style, which is quite an interesting difference to the rest of our collections. We also have a small number of natural history works which are stylistically quite different from what we've kind of seen quite a lot today. These are either taking inspiration from kind of Mughal miniatures, Indian miniature paintings, or slightly fantastical ones, such as this one from the Hardwick collection. These works remain kind of await further research, let me put it like that. We need to learn a little bit more about the inscriptions, about the subjects, and try and figure out who the artists were. But these are being produced not by European artists, we would say. So whilst the collection is strongest in South Asian material, we also have a number of quite important collections related to Southeast Asia, such as the Raffles collection of birds, mammals and plants. As with many of the collections I've already discussed, these were artworks being created for a British colonial official, Stamford Raffles, which were then sent back to the UK. The collection that the library holds was acquired in 2 stages. The first part was given by Raffles to the East India Company Library from directly, and then the second section was collected in the 2000s, when the British Library was able to acquire material directly from his descendants with the assistance of the Heritage Lottery Fund, the Art Fund and other supporters. We also have material slightly on a smaller scale from a range of other areas in Asia. So we have material from the Horsfield collection in Java, the Hodgson collection in Nepal, and then also an unnamed collection. So it's an album that we don't know who collected it, focusing on China as well. So this slide, similar to Cheryl's one, just gives a little bit of examples of how you are able to access these materials. Almost all of our natural history drawings are catalogued on the British Library's Explore Archives and Manuscripts page, and you are able to view the originals by booking an appointment in our print room by using the email apac-prints@bl.uk. You can also look at some of the printed resources, such as Mildred Archer's natural history drawings of the India Office Library, or Not Henry's publication on the Raffles collection, both of which are shown on this slide. We do also currently have a current opportunity to, well, we are currently recruiting for a 3-month full-time cataloguing post, which will be focusing on a collection material from our natural history collections. So if you did want more information about that, it is available through the British Library website. So I'm now going to kind of shift from my collection and Cheryl's collection to the work that we've been doing for the forthcoming exhibition. So the sheer range of material related to animals held within the British Library, and I haven't even kind of given you like a brief, I've given you kind of a drop of what material the library holds. The wealth of material held in the library has inspired the work that we're now doing for this forthcoming exhibition. Both Cheryl and I are curating the exhibition alongside our colleague Marlene Roy. And the aim of the exhibition is to explore how animals have been documented throughout history by different people in different cultures. We're selecting material from across the library's collections to explore as many different forms and mediums as possible, through the lens of science, art and sound. So we're not dealing with kind of mythology, religion, commerce, kind of economics, simply because we just don't have the space. Otherwise we would have done. So we've narrowed it down into the lens of science, art and sound, and also looking at how these sorts of technologies connected to these themes have enhanced our knowledge of the faunal inhabitants of the world, Asia and the world. Let me put it like that. So these are some of the items that we have selected. It's not all of the items that we've selected for the exhibition, but we have attempted to cover the entire globe. The slide shows here material from Japan, India, China, Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka. And we also have material from kind of Africa and North America, South America, Europe, perhaps not surprisingly, and some material from Australia. So the exhibition will be divided into 6 parts. The 4 main parts will focus on the kind of key habitats where you find animals, where they live, breed, and eat. So darkness for nocturnal or underground animals, water, land, and then air. Within each of these sections, the items that we've selected will be displayed in what we call thematic clusters. such as this one shown on the slide. These clusters include a range of material. This one in particular is looking at animals that have been transported from their kind of native normal habitats to others, to further around the world in terms of as gifts or as parts of diplomacy. This thematic clustering of objects has allowed us to place material from across the world, and that is chronologically diverse side by side, to explore similar kind of themes. So in this case, how animals have been moved around by humans. So in this cluster, we are very fortunate to be able to display material from Britain, so the elephant and the hippo on either side of the slide, alongside works from India. So we have our rather splendid squirrels in a plane tree, also our beautiful drawing of a cassowary, also from India, and then this absolutely spectacular album to do with animals that were imported into Japan, where we have very beautiful renditions of renderings of camels. This approach has allowed us to choose a much more diverse selection of material than perhaps we probably could have if we'd been slightly more kind of chronological or kind of geographical in our approach. And it means that we've been able to put artworks along sound material. So there's a very strong sound element in the exhibition, as well as manuscripts and printed works. It has also allowed us to step away from the separation of material that is kind of inherent within the library, in that different collections look after different material. We're actually able to put things side by side, which are coming from the same place, but we look after them by different curators look after them, if that makes sense. So instead, we have tried to take the library's holdings as a more holistic approach and a more global perspective on our understanding of animals. And we hope that the exhibition will highlight the wonder, beauty, and uniqueness of the library's collections, and also the wondrous nature of the world's animals. So although this has been a very brief overview of both mine and Cheryl's collections and also the forthcoming exhibition, we hope it has given you a very small peek into the diversity of material that the British Library holds. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you both very much indeed for that stunning presentation. We certainly did not end with a whimper, but we ended with birdsong, which was very magical. But that was really fabulous, and it clearly has the makings for a really spectacular exhibition. So thank you for the introduction. I was particularly struck by the slides showing diversity of genres and modes of depiction. So we're seeing animals in a I suppose context side by side with artistic and other styles of representation, particularly considering our discussions earlier. I can see we have questions flooding in, so we should go into those. First question, it's interesting there are so many recordings from China. Can you please tell us how or where these recordings came from?
Sure. So the sound recordings, we've got about 7,000 sound recordings, or unpublished sound recordings from across China. They've come from, some of them have come from ornithologists working out in the field. One particular researcher who's based at the University of Uppsala in Sweden, he's been working on warblers, particular group of warblers in China, and he's used his recordings alongside other recordings of ours to identify new species and reclassify species. So a lot of our material has come from scientists working in the field, also from bird tour leaders. So they obviously take people out on bird watching tours, but while they're there, they make sound recordings as well because they're interested in sounds. And so they make their way back into the library. And also just hobbyists who have gone over to China. It's been on their wish list, and they've gone over there, made sound recordings, and then archived them with us. So that's really the three main ways in which the recordings come into the sound archive.
Thank you, Cheryl. We also have a question about the elephant at the Tower of London.
It is a typo. It is a typo. I'm very sorry about that. It didn't live for over 400 years, nearly 400 years. It first arrived in the the Tower of London in 1255. And I think it died 4 years later.
And would you mind giving us the dates for the exhibition again, if they're known?
Sure. So it will open on the 21st of April 2023, and then will run till the end of August that same year.
We can certainly wish you best of luck with the exhibition and the preparations, and we're all very going to see it next year.
Thank you.
I don't know if there are any other questions or contributions regarding the presentation, or indeed presentations from earlier. We've been very fortunate to have such a wonderful selection of speakers speaking about such an agreeable topic. I'm glad that we've been able to enjoy so many great and stories today. And I do, if there aren't any other questions, then we have reached the end of today's conference proceedings. So I think most of you are clearly are either members or of